Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was asked to fill in for Ranking Member Burr, it's an honor to do it. Anyone in the U.S. Senate, I think I'm most recently off the pavement of actually living through these issues we're going to talk about here today. I come from Main Street. I chose not to go to Wall Street, to move back to my hometown. My wife did the same thing and has had a small business in our downtown for 43 years this September. When I ask her what she pays in terms of wages to her own employees, and they're like family, they're been there for a long time, way above what the average wage rate would be across most states, even in a low cost of living state like Indiana. And my discussion is going to center around one premise. I had a company that had 15 employees for 17 years. I know every aspect about what it takes to be successful in an enterprise, and it starts with treating your employees like family. And if you're going to grow into an enterprise like what I just left 2.5 years ago, it's because you've done all those things, and if you do it right, you don't need a union. And I'm for unions because you need them in places where you're up against a monolith of big business. But the premise today is going to be that whatever we do for workers' rights, which I believe in 100%, to be able to have them organize and express those, don't kill the golden goose that's made jobs for union workers possible. It's a small business. Remember, every company in this country, from General Motors to Amazon, started probably with an employee or two and did it in a hard-scrabble way like I did for 17 years, where my paycheck was generally lower, way under what it would have been for running a business or an enterprise, simply because of the fact that you deal with the economics at hand. And when you think about what it takes to get an enterprise large enough to have a union there representing employees, it is a perilous pathway. Most don't make it. And you need to measure, if we want the PRO Act to be considered, is it going to take out what allows unions to form in the first place, or what allows a little business to become a big one? And my contention is, and from what I'm hearing across the country in terms of small businesses, they think that this puts them in peril. And if you don't have small businesses that are healthy, you're not going to have big businesses, and you're not going to have employment bases that are large enough to need unions in the first place. So I'm worried that this is a one-size-fits-all, like many things we do here in D.C., and that for the reasons I'm going to mention here now, it's going to be detrimental to small business. And small business, most of them don't get a return on investment. They live out of that business for their wage, for their livelihood. And anything we do here, if it puts that in peril, it's a misguided effort from the top down, and in my opinion, is not needed. Ms. Cerolio, who has an enterprise in California, a place that largely rolls like the federal government in thinking you can do things from the top down. It's why many businesses are leaving the state. It's why many of us who consider doing business there do it with a second thought. We got there 10 years ago in my little business that now has become a big business, and that where we pay the highest starting wage in my hometown, in the lowest unemployment county. You don't feel welcome in places like that that tell you how you need to operate your business, and many times do it in a way that is going to chase you away from the very thing you're wanting to promote. Said earlier, I support the freedom to unionize. I think there's a place for it. You got big business. I've been one of the most outspoken here as a senator that that's a different type of entity than a Main Street enterprise. You may need to use dynamics differently to deal with them. But I want to list a few of the things. We got 27 right-to-work states. And this pretty well says that it's going to get rid of that if it can. To me, you're getting rid of the choice of whether you want to join a union or not. Unions, which I think should have the freedom to organize, got to make their case, though. You're going to end up in a place like Illinois where there's not a right to work law. Think about this. Their union membership has only gone up 1% since we put in right to work laws across the country. Union membership in Indiana has gone up 24% in a right to work state. Violating the rights of workers across America to prop up an outdated system that benefits Washington elites is not the answer. A union power grab, I'm not going to say that. I think that's kind of a hot phrase. I try to avoid them here. But if we're trying to grow anything for the sake of growing it, and if there's not merits to the case, it's misguided. The PRO Act will force employers to provide unions with work shift information and employees' personal contact information during organizing elections. Independent contractors, such as gig workers, will be made employees under the PRO Act, limiting these workers' ability to pick jobs and schedules that work for them and their families. The PRO Act will put the burden of proof on employers to prove that they didn't interfere in a union election, rather than on the party claiming that they did. The PRO Act will change the very definition of an employer by codifying a 2015 standard expanding joint employer status. This means that many small businesses would be considered joint employers. Litigation against franchise businesses nearly doubled due to this in 2015, and that's another issue to contend with. Many of the reasons folks don't go into a place like California is because the trial lawyers, in many cases, run the administrative dynamic there, chasing businesses away, losing jobs. For all of these reasons and many more, it's no surprise that American organizations across the country are strongly opposed to the PRO Act. Right here, a folder of over 280 organizations that represent small business have written accordingly. I ask unanimous consent to submit the 8 letters here representing more than 280 groups opposing the PRO Act.
Without objection.
Though government was much of the problem for small businesses last year, I acknowledge it that without it, without what we did here through the PPP in the moment of crisis, there is a need for it. That doesn't mean you take what we did and you broaden in a way that has already made a small business one of the most difficult things to grow into a large one. And if the PRO Act does anything to make it harder to start and grow a small business, everything that you're trying to do through the PRO Act becomes immaterial, and it's actually working against what you're really concerned with.